Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show. My name is Elle Russ, and I am a #1 best-selling author and master coach. My intention is to inspire, educate, and motivate you with weekly content featuring amazing guests and solo episodes. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about me, my courses, free masterclasses, partner discounts, and much more. Enjoy the show. Hey there, everyone. I am going to answer some questions today about thyroid, and some are common questions and some are a little bit different. So the first one I received was from a man, and he asked me, hey, I have Hashimoto's. Can I get a woman pregnant if I have Hashimoto's? Now, this is really not a yes or no answer, and I'll explain why. Here's the thing. Hypothyroidism is Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's is just the autoimmune form of hypothyroidism. When you have hypothyroidism, if it's severe and gone on too long and misdiagnosed and all of that, your sex hormones can start to crumble. Okay. So Hashimoto's, let's say, back to this guy who's wondering if he can get a woman pregnant. Well, the answer is, well, how's your Hashimoto's going, right? If you can treat it naturally and get it at bay and the antibodies are down, your sex hormones should be good. And a large part of this is diet. I talk about this in the Paleo Thyroid Solution. I talk about it in the Ultimate Thyroid course and pretty much everywhere else. But eliminating gluten is a big thing. We know for sure that gluten is one of the main triggers of the TPO Hashimoto's antibodies. But let's say this guy's Hashimoto's is out of control, untreated, all that stuff, then whether he needs thyroid hormones or not to get better, it doesn't really matter. If it's out of control and he's feeling very hypothyroid, then it could be affecting his reproductive hormones. Now, would it be affecting them so negatively that he wouldn't be able to get a woman pregnant? Well, maybe, maybe not. It depends on the side effects. So, for example, if the testosterone is affected so much when you're seriously hypothyroid, you're having trouble, let's say, getting erections. Well, okay, that's one way to cause a difficulty in getting a woman pregnant. But really, it could be sperm count. It could be all of these things. It could be even desire, right? It just depends on how far along or how bad this Hashimoto's has affected this guy. Now, I've met a 25-year-old where a thyroid problem completely obliterated his testosterone. And so would that make a difference? Again, always best to get pregnant or get someone pregnant when you're in the best health you can be, and for as long as you treat the Hashimoto's. Now, on the other side of it, if a woman has Hashimoto's that's untreated, and I mean not regulated, antibodies are out of control, very hypothyroid, it would not be a good idea to get pregnant. I would get it under control first and wait, because hypothyroidism, when untreated, whether it's Hashimoto's or not, can cause miscarriages and infertility. So you really don't want to have a miscarriage, right? Or a higher percentage chance of getting one. So you want to clean that all up. Now, Kara Hahn, who's a success story on the Ultimate Course Thyroid website page, she had 2 miscarriages. She was on thyroid hormone replacement from an endocrinologist who had never tested her for Hashimoto's and didn't know how to test reverse T3, free T3, and all of the stuff. And she had 2 miscarriages that she probably didn't need to have. Unbeknownst to her, she was being mistreated on T4 only medication by an endocrinologist. So, from a female or male perspective in pregnancy, when you're hypothyroid, the thyroid hormones are very critical to the production and regulation of all of the sex hormones for both men and women. So if your hormones are off as a woman and you get pregnant, and let's say you're not producing enough progesterone because you're hypothyroid and your T3 is in the tank, then you might not be able to really build that lining of the uterus to keep the baby in, because I believe progesterone shoots up 68+% or something when you get pregnant. So you could have a miscarriage at that point if the lining isn't perfectly formed. It's sort of the primal perspective of your body being like, uh-oh, they're in danger. No position to have a kid. We can't bring this to term. I mean, it's not like the body's talking like this, obviously. I'm just giving a metaphor here, but it's sort of making the decision for you. You know, so yes, you can get pregnant when you're hypothyroid. You can get someone pregnant, hypothyroid, Hashimoto's or not. It's really a matter of what the hypothyroidism or where you're at with it and what it is doing with your sex hormones. So also the other thing too, pregnancy, I wrote a whole entire blog article about this, and you can go to elleruss.com/ blog, type in thyroid, a ton of articles will come up. But when you are pregnant, you might need more thyroid hormones replacement if you're on it. As the pregnancy goes by, there's going to be more of a demand from the baby and you. And then sometimes you drop it down once you've had the child, or et cetera, et cetera. So it needs to be monitored much more closely when you're on thyroid hormone replacement. So someone on thyroid hormone replacement, if they're doing well and they've reached their optimal dose, they may just stay there and be fine for years, or they may have a little bit more in winter, a little bit less in summer. But for the most part, it can maintain. When you're pregnant, though, it needs to be tested like every month or two. So again, the thyroid is the master gland. When it is off, everything's off, and the thyroid hormones play a critical role in regulating the production and activity of sex hormones, estrogen, testosterone, etc., which could lead to imbalances and then would affect these things. All right, I got another question from someone who had a partial thyroidectomy. So a thyroidectomy is when they remove the entire thyroid gland. Usually it's due to thyroid cancer. You may have heard this, and I'm sure thyroid cancer patients hate it, but everyone's always like, oh, thyroid cancer is the best kind of cancer to get. Yes and no. First of all, if it hasn't spread, that's true because you just remove the gland. Great. Okay. But when you remove the gland, that person's going to have to be on thyroid hormone replacement. All right. So it's kind of a lucky thing unless it's spread outside the gland. But if it's isolated, you remove it and you've removed the cancer. Great. Now, a person who's had a full thyroidectomy would absolutely need to be on thyroid hormone replacement, ideally a T4, T3 combo. So if you know anyone who's had a thyroidectomy, or if you're out there and you're on T4 only, it might likely fail you, or you might be listening to this because you already feel like shit. So it's rare that I've seen anyone who's had a thyroidectomy, full thyroidectomy, who flourishes on T4 only treatment. They usually flourish on T4, T3 treatment, or sometimes a little bit of T4 and mostly T3. Never seen anyone thrive after a thyroidectomy on T4 only treatment. I'm not saying it's not possible. It just seems like it's more of a problem. So if you look at Carrie Forrest, she's a great example. You can go to the ultimatethyroidcourse.com webpage and scroll down and listen to a clip of her talking about her success story. She could barely stand up at the time because the endocrinologist and surgeons who had taken her thyroid gland gave her T4 only, and she was suffering so badly she could barely walk, stand up. She'd be lightheaded. She couldn't cook. She couldn't do anything until she heard me talk with Dr. Forsman, who's on my book. And she saw him and she finally got fixed. And now she's on a T4, T3 combo. She takes mostly T3 for the day, but she takes a substantial amount of T4 in the morning with some T3. So if you've had a full thyroidectomy, you cannot get out of being on thyroid hormone replacement. You would die without it. However, and this just goes to show you, if you can't live without a thyroid gland, aka the thyroid hormones that the gland produces, if you remove that, you are removing the production of these very life-giving, life-critical hormones. You've got an issue. The person's going to be dead or very sick in short order or in a coma. You have to replace those thyroid hormones immediately if they've had a full thyroidectomy. Now, I've said it before, it's very rare that a child is born without a thyroid gland, but mental retardation and other things will set in, possibly death, if it's not caught right away. Because thyroid hormones have such a critical role in the production of our brains as infants, everything, okay? Heart. So if it's not caught right away, major problems can happen. All right. So if you've had a full thyroidectomy, you are on thyroid hormone replacement, or you wouldn't be alive to listen to this. All right. Now, the problem with anyone suffering in the aftermath of a thyroidectomy is usually not being on the right amount of thyroid hormones or the right dosage, which is a problem for anyone with thyroid issues, okay, who have any kind of hypothyroidism, but is extra critical when you don't even have a thyroid gland with any reserves at all on thyroid hormones in case of emergency. So let's move on to a partial thyroidectomy. Sort of the same story. People have come to me and they're like, all right, look, they took half my gland. Now, I did meet someone once with half a thyroid gland who I think they were just so opposed to going on thyroid hormones, which you don't understand. They're completely safe and innocuous, but they claimed that they functioned okay without thyroid hormone replacement. But they looked terribly unhealthy and were still struggling. And so now maybe they were going through something else. I just think a lot of people are very resistant to taking thyroid hormone replacement. They want to try to do it naturally, or they'll go, oh, I'm doing okay. The woman with the partial thyroidectomy told me what her levels of T3 were. And I were like, oh my God, you're hypothyroid. Like, you have half a thyroid and you're hypothyroid. Like, you've got to fix that or you're always going to suffer. So people are like, I'm going to try to stay off medication. I'm going to do this naturally. It's not really medication, guys. It's a hormone that your body needs, right? It's not going to be a fun life if your thyroid hormones are in the tank. If you have a partial thyroidectomy and you're still trying to, die on the hill of, I'm going to be all natural. Sometimes you can't do it. And that's okay. There's answers for that. So it's not to say that someone who's had a partial thyroidectomy, means just the partial thyroid gland removed, that they won't be able to sustain a great life with just half a thyroid. They might be able to. However, those people really, really have to get tested and checked and make sure, because thyroid hormone replacement supplementation would be ideal for someone with half a thyroid. Again, if it works for them without thyroid hormone replacement, that's fine, but they will become victims to the uninformed doctor who will see things within range, not optimal within range, and think, oh, well, half your thyroid's working great. And this is the problem with anyone getting tested for thyroid, right? Let's say the free T3 result is 2.0 to 4.0. Sorry, the range. Let's say the reference range for a free T3 test is 2.0 to 4.0. Someone comes back with a 2.4, and the doctor's like, oh, that's fine because it's within range. 2.4 is a hypothyroid free T3 in a range of 2.0 to 4.0. We don't go by if it's in range. We go by what's optimal, and we know what's optimal. And also what's optimal for the person. So those are the thyroidectomy answers there for that. Another one is always sort of a question about which way do I attack a problem that I'm having health-wise. So for example, my thyroid's tanked and so are my adrenals. So my doctor wants to work on shaping up my adrenals first. All right, look, that is an appropriate philosophy. So where would that philosophy really apply? It would apply if someone is so stressed out, I don't know, going through divorce, medical school, stressed out in life, something bad happening, not getting a lot of sleep, like something happening, and they're so stressed out that their adrenals have tanked. Now, in that case, sure, you want to try to bump up the adrenals and support them. But the truth is that the adrenal glands, in order to make cortisol, need thyroid hormone T3. So sometimes the doctor will try this, and I've seen them try this way too long. They've been trying for 8 months to treat the adrenals of someone who's had shitty adrenals and thyroid for years. Because at that point, the adrenals aren't coming back. It's really the thyroid that's affecting the adrenals, not the adrenals affecting the thyroid. It can be both ways. But when someone's exhibiting hypothyroid symptoms for years and then finally has adrenal, fatigue, which they all usually do, I've had it twice, then the doctor's like, oh, well, your adrenals are off. We'll try to fix that. And they spend too long there. So you just have to gauge the situation. If you just had a really stressed out couple of months, your adrenals are tanked and now your thyroid's off. Okay, yeah, do a reset. Do a major reset overhaul and wait 8 to 12, 16 weeks, whatever, see if things change in terms of the numbers. Sometimes stress can cause a thyroid problem, but for the most part, the adrenals get shot because of the thyroid problem. So treating the adrenals won't turn the thyroid problem around. And then it doesn't work. So now in cases with there has this, again, the best outcomes come when people are just extremely stressed out, life, stress, and their adrenal glands are shot. And the adrenal gland needs T3 to produce cortisol, and thyroid hormones need cortisol to kind of get into the cell. So they are synergistic and work hand in hand, which is why, by the way, side note, the paleothyroid solution, paleo meaning not just a way to lose weight, it's because it's the ultimate in blood glucose management and adrenal management. Those two things go hand in hand so well with thyroid. That's why I always recommend a paleo paradigm. So they are synergistic. I had adrenal fatigue twice when I suffered with thyroid issues. And you know what? Listen, it wasn't my lifestyle that was doing it. It was the hypothyroidism that tanked my adrenals. The first episode was when I was about 30. I had hypothyroidism, tanked my adrenals into adrenal fatigue. Then I had a reverse T3 problem. Same thing happened. So, did you really just go through a stressful thing in life? Did someone just die? Did you just get hit by a car? These things can contribute to lack of sleep, stress, anxiety, and so on. And the adrenals can always get under control in their own in an isolated way, but sometimes not if it's not just that issue. Like if it just wasn't caused by a life thing. Let's say you had a life thing and that went on for a long time and then your thyroid dropped as a result of it. Which do you do first? Again, go ahead and give supporting the adrenals, sleep, doing all of the lifestyle adjustments. Go ahead and give that a shot. If that doesn't work in 8 weeks, you might want to, or 12 weeks, you might want to try thyroid hormone replacement if that's what's right for you at that time. So, you can also do a home cortisol test, a 24-hour cortisol test. I don't think you need a doctor for it. It's like $100 in the States. And there's ways you can test your temperature to see about adrenal insufficiency. That's in my book. But for the most part, the 24-hour cortisol test will pretty much give you the answer that you need. Now, if you feel like you have a surge of energy, like you're exhausted most of the day, but you have some surge of energy after 6 p.m., and then you're up at night, that can be a wonky adrenal problem caused by hypothyroidism. You might just have low cortisol all day. That was me. That's also hypothyroidism. So I wanted to sleep all the time, could sleep through the night, 10, 12 hours, never could get enough sleep, just exhausted. Some people are exhausted like that as well, but then they have this surge in the evening. Mine just stayed absolutely crappy low the entire day, pretty much. So usually hypothyroidism, you have a low morning cortisol, and you might have it low throughout the day, but then there's that little switch where you get a surge. So that can happen. And these are just wonky, shitty adrenals that are struggling in the face of being presented with a lack of T3 from hypothyroidism and not being able to produce enough cortisol. So it's like a draggy thing. It's hours in the morning, like I just can't. Like you're up, you're not like up and at 'em. You know what I mean? You're like, oh my God, I don't want to do anything. It takes me forever. Adrenals, thyroid, completely related, synergistic with each other. But again, how long are you going to treat the one thing in hopes that the other thing is going to come around? And sometimes that doesn't work. The adrenals and the thyroid are just two very essential components of how we feel in life. They're so attached to how we feel, our level of mental focus and concentration, our actual level of energy, all energy, including metabolism, the burning of fat, that's also energy. You don't want too high of cortisol and too low. You want it to be balanced, right? It's higher in the morning, and then it kind of peaks, then it kind of drops. That's how it should be. And you should be able to go to bed every night. Now, I never was up at night. I slept the entire time. I didn't have the surge of energy after 6 p.m. I was just exhausted the entire day. But then there are people who are exhausted all day, and then they have this resurgence of energy and their mind's wandering. They literally can't go to bed. And then they're worried that if they take any amount of T3 for thyroid hormone replacement because they heard T3 is energy, they're worried about not being able to sleep because they already had issues sleeping. Most patients that I deal with all over the world sleep better once they get some T3s at the right level for them. Another question I get asked about adrenals is this, and this is a very important one. A fellow thyroid author, Paul Robinson, he wrote a book called Recovering with T3. It is an amazing book. He also wrote a book called The Circadian T3 Method. Now, this is a method that he came up with, and I'm going to tell you what the method is. I'm going to tell you how and why it's associated with the adrenals. And then I'm going to tell you where the mismatch comes in from people thinking they should try it when most people don't need to try it. That's why I'm addressing it on this podcast. I get too many calls with private thyroid coaching clients who are like, oh, I tried this. And you're like, why did you do that? They're like, I don't know, I read about it. And you're like, yeah, but did you understand it? And they usually don't. Okay. Look, no fault of anyone's. Everyone's just trying to do their best out there, right? But let me just break it down for you. So there are people that have been like so hypothyroid for so long, right? Never got treated or not treated right. And their adrenals are completely shot to the point where they have to take HC. So like they have to take basically hydrocortisone, like they have to take it because their adrenals are not producing anything. Now, these people then are very dependent on like living every day and being able to get out of bed based on a pill. So Paul Robinson realized, and just sort of, maybe not the first to realize, but this is what he assessed and figured out. The adrenals have, assuming you're just, waking up normal time, like between 7 and 8 a.m. Okay, let's just choose that time for like a normal waking hour. then at that point, the adrenals between about 4 and 8 a.m. That's the adrenal like cortisol production window. It's when your body is starting to produce that stuff so that by the time the 8 o'clock rolls around, you're up. But if you're taking HC, you got to wake up and take it in order to have that happen, because the adrenals need T3 in order to produce cortisol. Paul was able to figure out that people, if they woke up, particularly people on T3 only, if they woke up at like 3 a.m, set an alarm, took their thyroid medication, then went back to bed for 4 hours, it would allow them to eventually wean off of the HC and have their adrenals reproduce cortisol and get back into the freaking game. That's the circadian T3 method. Most people don't need to do this. I do not recommend you do it unless you know for sure you have like serious adrenal almost failure, because if you have to take something to produce cortisol, that's maybe your indication that the circadian T3 method is right for you. But it's really not right for most people, guys. It's not. Most people just wake up, you take your dose of thyroid medication. Over time, the adrenals kick back in and you're good. He developed this for people who were suffering so badly, their adrenals were really not making any cortisol. And this was his sort of trick and hack to get the adrenals to sort of get back in the game. Okay? So I hope that makes sense. It's essentially a solution for people, again, where their adrenal fatigue has gotten so bad to the point where they just, nothing is correcting it and it's failing to produce cortisol. And so this is sort of igniting and jumpstarting it back. But again, most people do not have to do this unless you are on HC and you really need to wean off of it. So unless you are taking HC, or you know for sure that your adrenals are completely shot, and I don't mean shot from hypothyroidism, I mean you literally are on HC. That's usually the case, okay? So this is rare. This is much rarer than other general adrenal issues with thyroid. Almost everyone has hypothyroidism. If it's gone on for too long, not been treated, of course, because, half the doctor, 99% of the doctors aren't informed and 60% are even undiagnosed and unaware. Usually people's adrenals tank when they've had hypothyroidism for a while that is untreated. It comes back with thyroid hormone replacement or the correction of the thyroid in however you correct it. So this is not the best move. This is not something people should just flippantly be like, oh, I'm going to try that because I'm not better yet. Don't do that. Don't do that. You have to really assess your adrenals. So if you've got no cortisol, whatever, and you're taking HC, then I would look into the Circadian T3 dosing method, CT3M, by Paul Robinson. It would be an interesting thing to discuss with your doctor and see if that might be the move. But I've just had too many people who've called me from all over the world. They've heard or read about this, and then they know their adrenals are suffering, but they're not really sure how to evaluate labs or how to look at stuff. They'll just go, I don't know. I woke up at 3 a.m. and started taking my medication because I read about it. And you're like, why are you doing that? It's just a miscommunicated biohack, not miscommunicated from Paul Robinson, I guess misunderstood biohack. So anyway, then there's another one. This is another one, which is really a misconception. Let's say someone is taking T3 only, all right? And they're starting to feel better. And they're like, oh, I'll just take more. And then they're like, oh, I'm starting to feel real tired. I think I'm hypo. Now I need to take more. Okay. This is very bad self-doctoring, guys. This is really not a good move. There's a reason we do blood tests and we take temps. People have a misconception of T3 that is so energizing. So they start to feel a little good if they're taking T3 only. And then they're like, all right, I'll take a little bit more. And then maybe they start to feel tired and they're like, oh God, I guess I need more. And now they're really tired. They keep getting tired. It is because they are hyper and it is exhausting. It's hypermetabolic. They eat a lot of food. You're burning a lot of food. Your temperature's high. It is just hyperthyroidism is a terrible state. And people think that hyperthyroidism is being hyper. It's not. It's exhausting. It makes you like wired out and tired. So you don't just take more T3 and keep taking more T3 or keep taking more NDT until you lose weight or feel better, because at some point, if you're not doing the diagnostics, the shit will backfire on you. A doctor said once, I'm not sure if I said this in my book, but a doctor once told me, I think I did. A doctor once told me, they're like, I think you're on too much T3 because, I can tell by how fast you talk. And I said, have we met? Because you don't fucking know me. I've been talking this fast forever. So hyperthyroidism doesn't mean hyper. And I really want this to get through. There are people of hypothyroidism. When I was hyper, I had very little energy. Being a fast talker is not hyperthyroid. What a dumb diagnostic of the doctor. Just because someone's talking fast, suddenly they're hyperthyroid and on too much T3. I was talking this fast when I was hypothyroid. Okay. So hyper doesn't mean hyperactive. It's not like cocaine. Again, this is where people get this misconception. They're like, oh, I don't want to take T3 at night because I had trouble sleeping. And I hear the T3 is going to help you sleep. Now, there are caveats to this. There are a few people who have realized, you know what, I can't take my last dose has to be before 5 p.m. because the T3 keeps me up. But usually this is, again, rarer. So again, it's just like, oh, let me try it. Let me just keep taking it. You don't just try stuff until you fully understand it. I see a lot of people misunderstanding the circadian dosing method. I see people misinterpreting this other element of, oh, I don't feel good, I'll take more until I feel better. Then they're exhausted and they're thinking, oh no, I'm really hypo, I need more. And what they've done is they've crossed over into hyperthyroidism and didn't even realize it. Because they're not taking the diagnostics, they're not checking the temps, they're not doing the blood work. So, a lot of times there are people who be like, well, I decided to do this, or I went to my doctor and I did this. And I'm like, okay, why did you do that? And like, they don't have an explanation for it. That's the whole point of me being out here trying to educate, guys. If you have a thyroid problem, you have to get educated. Maybe you won't be as knowledgeable as me right away, but that really actually would be my goal. As someone who has it, who has hypothyroidism, has it treated perfectly, but also people out there who've just been 180-degree success stories. It's absolutely possible to live a great life, but that doesn't mean you don't have to be attentive to it. Once you get there, once you're feeling good, once you're not hypothyroid anymore, okay, that's great. Thank God I don't have to keep searching anymore. And I thought I could give it up then too. When I had first gotten better on natural desiccated thyroid many years ago after my first bout of hypothyroidism, I thought I was done. I'm like, oh, good. I never have to read another fucking book or look at anything again or talk to a doctor. I'm good. I can just go about my life. Yeah. Then I got a reverse T3 problem years later. And I was like, oh shit. Now I'm back in the saddle trying to figure out something that doctors don't understand again. So you still have to be attentive to it. Even if you reach your optimal dose and you're on thyroid hormone replacement, you might need adjustments. Something could happen over time, where as you become healthier after years of being hypo, and you become healthier and you're not treated on thyroid hormone replacement, you're doing well, you lose the weight, the inflammation's gone, you're doing great. Now you get to a point where you're healthy, you're more metabolically efficient, and you need less thyroid hormone replacement. How do you know? Because you should be attentive to understanding how you feel with these symptoms. You should have a thermometer ready to go in case something's wrong. If you feel like you're on too much or something's off, you start taking 3 days of basal and afternoon temps. That'll tell you a lot. That might tell you enough to go get a thyroid test. You still have to be attentive to it. So, unless you're attentive to understanding your body, like, oh, I feel a little warm right now. I'm feeling a little like hot. Let me take my temp. This is why we go directly to temp, because you could be feeling cold, but it could be because you're on too much T3, you're hyper, and you kind of have a fever, and now your body's exuding chills. We have diagnostics. The whole, I'm still cold. Have you taken your temps? The person's like, no. Then how do you know you're cold? Now listen, you know you're cold when you're cold, right? That sounds like a dumb thing to ask, right? Like, obviously. But just because your hands and feet are cold, are you chilled? And you might be internally chilled too, but then let's get the diagnostics to confirm it. There's been moments around my period or hormone shifts or whatever, and I'm kind of chilly in my apartment, and I'm like, ooh, and I take my temp, and my temp's 98.6. It's fine. I didn't sit there and go, oh, I'm cold. I need more thyroid hormone today. So as you get healthier, as you get better, things might shift and you might need to do changes in your thyroid hormone replacement. You can go to the doctor for that, but obviously you can be the first attack plan and the first observational entity that gets what's happening to you. So that's another mistake. Oh, I'm done. I'm finally done. Now I don't have to do anything about this anymore. Let's say you treated the hypothyroidism naturally, and that would be great. And you eliminated the offensive foods, you got it together, sleep, rest, nutrition, you did all the things in the paleothyroid solution or whatever. You're doing great. That's wonderful. But you still need to be attentive too, because if there's a dip for a long period of time, you may not recognize it. These things creep up on you guys. You might be going through a couple of months where you're sort of bummed or general malaise or starting to not be excited about life, or you're taking some naps in the afternoon, or do you know what I mean? And these things are creepers because it's like you don't realize until you go, oh my God, I've been taking naps every day, or you know what I mean? So these are the things you have to look out for. So I still would comprehensively check thyroid twice a year if you've reached your optimal dose and you're doing good. If you've solved hypothyroidism naturally, great. I still would also get checked a couple times a year. And of course, go get checked anytime you think there might be an issue. The other thing I want to touch on here, because I am getting a lot of questions about it, and I ended up writing a blog article on it recently about thyroid eye disease. So if you see any television right now, of course, you've seen past couple of years, we've been watching TV. It's like, wow, suddenly there's just a ton of diabetes medication, right? There's blood sugar control medications, the Ozempics, the thing. I mean, it's like, wow. And we go, okay, that makes sense. There's a huge diabetes epidemic, so that makes sense. Got it. But then I suddenly started to see these thyroid eye disease commercials, and I thought, what the fuck is this? Because this is related mostly to Graves' disease, which is hyperthyroidism. It's like Hashimoto's, except for it's an autoimmune disorder that makes your thyroid go hyper instead of Hashimoto's, which usually makes your thyroid go hypo. There is no way in this world that this amount of money would be spent on medications for this if there has not been a serious uptake in Graves' disease. Now, back in 2016, when the paleothyroid solution was first published. Now, at that time, the number one prescription in the US was Synthroid. Okay, just one brand of one thyroid hormone, just T4 only, just Synthroid was the number one prescription in 2016. When I did research recently on this, the number one prescriptions in the US right now, like the top 10, they're all for autoimmune disorders, because autoimmune disorders are on the rise. Gee, what could possibly be contributing to that? Shitty food, toxic environment, crappy oils, all the stuff paleo doesn't allow. Paleothyroid solution, back to that. But here's the thing. Okay, look, are you living in black mold? Are you microwaving stuff out of plastic still? Aside from that kind of shitty diet or black mold or a tooth infection or something that could really ignite a crazy thing. So if it's rare that thyroid eye disease, like TED, T-E-D, thyroid eye disease, it's so rare. It's rare that it is caused by hypothyroidism, but it's usually with people with hyperthyroidism. This gives me such concern to see that this is growing. Now, here's other shitty symptom too. Shitty thing about this, the symptoms of this. They're like, here's a medication to treat TED, to treat thyroid eye disease. Here's a medication to, again, same with like a blood sugar. Like, here's a medication to reduce your blood sugar. Good luck. Good fucking luck with that. It can help you for a while. It'll backfire. Eventually, you need to change your diet. Okay. No pill is going to save you from type 2 diabetes. So this is one of those things. Oh, here's another prescription for something that we can't fix because we don't know enough because we're dum-dums about thyroid. It is no different than having hypothyroidism, being undertreated in some way, complaining about a hypothyroid symptom to your doctor, but your doctor's so dumb and they think that they're treating your thyroid correctly because they don't know what they're doing. And then they go, oh yeah, well, you have hypothyroidism and depression goes hand in hand with that. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. when you're hypothyroid and you're treated properly, you don't have depression. Now, there's a nuance. Of course, are there people still suffering with depression that have their thyroids completely perfect? Absolutely. I'm not saying there aren't other external circumstances or things within one's body that can cause it. I believe people can be depressed even with a perfect thyroid. But just go with me on this for a second. When you have hypothyroidism-induced depression, it goes away when your hypothyroidism is fixed. Usually these people that are still struggling with the symptom of hypothyroidism are not optimized on thyroid hormone replacement. And their doctors are too dumb, and they're too dumb not to know because they haven't read my book or take my course. And we're all trying to do our best, and they think the doctor knows what's up. So you don't need a drug to solve thyroid eye disease. You need to solve the underlying problem, which is hyperthyroidism. Like, for example, you're always going to be constipated if you never solve your hypothyroidism and you have severe hypothyroidism. You don't need laxatives. You don't need a colonic, okay? You need to solve the underlying problem. You don't keep taking Pepsid AC for your acid reflux. So stop eating the fucking shit that gives you the acid reflux. Stay away from tomato juice and the coffee and right? It's putting a Band-Aid on something that they're not, because there's a money in the Band-Aid, not a money in saying, hey, adjust your diet so that you don't have type 2. I'm not saying it's a large conspiracy, guys. It's just people trying to make money out there. That's all. It's just a pharmaceutical company trying to make money. So take this pill. Let's check it in a year. Here, you have thyroid eye disease. Oh, here, we'll give you all these treatments, but we're not treating the underlying problem. Anyone who goes in with an elevated HbA1c with type 2 diabetes and is approaching type 2 diabetes should be told immediately, go low carb right now, get on the primal blueprint, get on keto, whatever, do something. They shouldn't be given a pill and says, oh, well, watch this. They're given no nutritional advice when nutrition is what gave it to them in the first place. Unbeknownst to them, maybe. Look, my body's guilty of it. I was pre-diabetic at one point. Now imagine the person who's hypothyroid. They're mistreated or undertreated. Now they've got thyroid hormone now they've got, they're edging towards type 2 diabetes because they don't have any metabolism. So even their normal diet is making them insulin resistant. Now the doctor's trying to give them something for insulin resistance without trying to solve the underlying problem that led them to insulin resistance in the first place. So dumb. Got to go to the underlying cause always and see if you can correct it. And with thyroid, you can. You can. When you treat hypothyroidism correctly, every single symptom is gone. Again, not saying you could treat that and still be suffering from something, but usually that's the case. So it's just this philosophy of instead of me knowing how to look at your thyroid correctly and treating things correctly, I'm just going to chalk it up to the fact that you have this thing I can't treat correctly. And so depression is associated with it, or, oh, I can't treat this correctly and thyroid eye disease is associated. So here's some Prozac, here's some medication for thyroid eye disease. I mean, you get rid of the disease, you treat the disease. Diet is a huge part of both Hashimoto's and Graves'. So I did a podcast on hyperthyroidism on the old Primal Blueprint podcast with Dr. Forsman. We talked about it. Thyroid eye disease can be bulging eyes, redness, swelling, double vision, dry eyes, and irritation. That's what I experienced. So when I was hyperthyroid, there was one point that I was on too much T3 many, many years ago. One of the things when you're hypothyroid, and I really felt this, I felt like my eyes, when I blinked, it was like gritty sand. You have really, really dry eyes, but then it's like gritty sand in your eyes. And you can also have some eye pressure or pain. Now, again, this wasn't like Graves' disease. This was just medication-induced hyperthyroidism. But I did have these really gritty, weird eyes. It felt like whenever I blinked, there was sandpaper there. And on thyroid eye disease, it's triggered by some of this autoimmune dysfunction that's responsible for Graves'. So the immune system is mistakenly targeting tissues around the eyes, right? That's what happens. So it leads to inflammation, changes, that kind of stuff. So sure, are there artificial tears, blah, blah, blah? Yeah, that's all great. How long are you going to patch the symptoms of things that are correctable underneath. Every single thyroid problem is correctable, manageable, and sometimes completely fixable. So if you haven't already yourself, but definitely send anyone you know who's got a thyroid issue, or they're on thyroid hormone replacement, they're still not feeling great, or they're still struggling and complaining about being fat or not being able to lose weight, any of that stuff, send them right to my free thyroid masterclass. Just freethyroidmasterclass.com. It's about an hour and a half video of me talking about all of this stuff. Also you can go to my website. Hopefully there'll still be spots. If you go to elleruss.com and you just hang out on the main page for 5 or 7 seconds, something should pop up saying that there is a free thyroid webinar. It's a Q&A with me as well that I'm doing on July 12th. You can sign up for that and you can get your personal questions answered for me for free. And I will be doing a giveaway as well for my course. A lot of these thyroid problems are quick solutions, even though it sounds so difficult. But I just want to give you hope out there, like from my perspective, because first of all, I did this by myself to myself. I fixed myself twice. I really, really know what this is about. This can be a very quick solution for a lot of people. For the majority of people, hypothyroidism can be solved quickly. It's in how well you are doing at persevering and making sure you're getting tested in a timely manner so that you can move up the ladder and get to the place you need to go. On another note, aside from these thyroid questions, I just want to say I am so excited summer has started. Summer is lovely here in California right now. I am so happy about it. And I also finished a third book that I wrote during the pandemic. I'm in the process of editing it, and I will be touching base with my email list. If you haven't subscribed to my newsletter, definitely go to my website, elleruss.com. On the first page, scroll down. There should be a button that has you subscribe to my email list. I only email everyone once a week, roughly. It's rare that I throw in more than 4 emails a month. Every Monday, I send everyone out a blog article on either mindset or health, some news and updates, but I'm going to be talking more about my upcoming book. And I'm also going to have an amazing course associated with it and a live group coaching program. I'm really excited about this. If you have any questions about thyroid, mindset, and confidence, please email me at l@elleruss.com. And if you haven't already, I would so appreciate if you could write a review of this podcast. If you enjoy listening to this every week, I would love that public feedback. Go to Spotify or Apple, write a 5-star review. That would just be so wonderful. And again, if you know anyone who's suffering with hormonal imbalances or thyroid issues, send them my way or send them to my website or help get people on the quick path to health. I hope everyone is doing well, and I hope you have a wonderful summer. Hey listeners, over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products, and I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.